Looking for something to read? Well, these are the books that I've written. Hop on down to the description to find the Amazon links for all 4 of them, and keep your eyes open for more in the future. With that said, on to the video.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the Omni viewer, and here we are at the end. Childhood's end and the end of GAMERA REBIRTH. We have reached the conclusion. So, after I give my assessment on the episode itself, I will give my overall thoughts on the series as a completed experience. Okay, so in terms of who the opponent is, some people were speculating that maybe a monster would come back that had been done before. Some people believed that it might be a new monster. The show kind of splits the difference. It's a Gauss, and Gauss is, of course, Gamera's arch enemy, so having the series begin and end with him facing one makes sense. But at the same time, this Gauss is a very different Gauss. It's much bigger, its skin looks like rotting meat, it's got 6 eyes, it's got weirder powers, it has those gigantic ears. It's like a super Gauss. Hyper Gauss maybe will be the term applied to it. I don't know, I haven't looked it up to see if it has a special name yet. Either way though, it's bringing the series full circle by having it end as it began, with Gamera fighting Gauss, but it's upped the ante. And I think as a choice for that, like I said, it makes sense that you would have him fight his archenemy again. Gauss is the closest thing Gamera has to an archenemy. And I think that's largely because he's one of the only recurring monsters in the series other than Gamera himself. There were 2 different appearances in the Showa series, although the Space Gauss wasn't actually fought by Gamera. Still, it appeared in Gamera vs. Geron. It made multiple appearances in the Heisei trilogy, again, the beginning and the end, and it was featured at the beginning of Gamera the Brave. Ergo, appropriate to end it that way, but also finding a way to upgrade it and make it clear that this is not just going to be a repeat of what came before. Very smart move. This Gauss is a far greater opponent than the first one was, and even does something that leads to the ending, which I'll get to in a moment. But yeah, overall I think that was a good choice. Also, because I know somebody's going to point it out, yes, I did notice the little reference to the very first movie, Gamera the Invincible, or if you're a purist, Gamera the Giant Monster, how a lot of the finale takes place within the vicinity of a lighthouse, just like one of the key scenes from that original Gamera movie. They never actually go into the lighthouse, but it's there. I'm pretty sure it was there because it was meant to be a reference. So again, it's a well-played kind of Easter egg. If you're not familiar with the Gamera series and this is your introduction to the whole thing, it's just there as part of the set piece. If you're a longtime fan though, you look at that and you instantly recognize what it's supposed to be referencing. That's a well-played kind of Easter egg. The kind that's noticeable, but it's not intrusive. But of course, I have to talk about the actual ending, like the way it concludes. So, I've been spoiling every other episode. You know I'm going to spoil this one too. And I can see this ending being a controversial one, potentially, because it does something that no other Gamera movie has ever dared to do, with one exception. It kills Gamera. Now, when I say one exception, I mean that, technically speaking, Gamera dies at the beginning of Gamera the Brave. But that's in the very beginning, and then the rest of the movie is about a new Gamera appearing in the form of Todo. So, having the story conclude with Gamera dying, that hasn't been done before. Even the very first Gamera movie, they couldn't kill him. The best they could do was put him in a rocket and send him up into space, hoping that he doesn't come back. He did, of course, but that's a whole other story. Now, this could be controversial because you could say that goes against the whole point. Gamera never dies. Gamera never loses that way. Even if he does appear to die, he comes back. But in this particular case, I kind of think it was appropriate. It's following through with the theme of having the protector being someone willing to make that sacrifice that started with Joe in the previous episode, and Gamera carries it through. Which kind of means that, yes, Boko is now alone, he doesn't have anyone to protect him, but right at the end, he does say that he has to protect someone. He acknowledges that he's got to somehow come into his own and become the thing that has been in his life the whole time. He needs to be the guardian now. He needs to be the one who saves. And he does manage to save Gamera prior to Gamera making that sacrifice. So that brings Boko's whole arc through to the end. But of course, Boko has to save Gamera not just from the conspiracy, but himself. Turns out the super hyper Gauss infected Gamera, and basically for a brief moment turned him evil as part of the conspiracy's ultimate contingency plan. But the fact that Boko was able to get through to him does mean that by the end, Boko has become the protector. And you get the sense that moving forward, he will be able to stand up for himself better. You notice that even the dynamic with his mother and her horrible sugar bowl haircut has changed for the better. Partly because she's been worried about him, and though we didn't really see her all that much, you get the sense maybe she reprioritized some things, and partly because Boko has been through so darn much that he must have grown, and he does come into his own. Character development. Now that is something I've been wanting to see in a kaiju anime for a while now. But like I said, killing Gamera can be seen as a controversial thing. And even with the idea that it does fit thematically, I was still surprised by it. However, there is still hope, because at the very end, we see that the government has made a new Gamera that's going to eventually grow and become humanity's new protector. And he bears a striking resemblance to Toto, which I'm sure was intentional. So it ends with a sense of hope, and a sense that Boko is going to continue being Gamera's protector as he grows into the protector for humanity. So like I said, everything comes full circle. In a way, it feels like we don't even need a second season. I know a lot of people have been saying that they hope for a second season, but I'm not so sure we need one. See, it feels like the story has reached its natural endpoint. It did everything it set out to do, it reached its conclusion, it told a story set within a very specific space of time, and having reached the end, it lets you know that things will continue, sure, but this particular era of these characters' lives has come to a conclusion. And I feel like if you were to continue that, it would sort of lessen the impact a little. See, the thing is, not everything needs to have a sequel. If the story has ended, you don't necessarily want to cheapen it by continuing it and saying, oh, actually, it's not over. Because, especially these days, we've seen far too many examples of how sequels think that the only way they can carry the story forward is to reset everything to square one. It's a very common problem. Or, even if it doesn't set things back to square one, it might continue things in a way that just doesn't seem to fit, or lessens the impact of what the finale had. So, I feel like if it ended here, that would be okay. But that being said, I'm speaking exclusively about Gamera Rebirth in that sense. Gamera Rebirth had to reintroduce Gamera into a new setting where kaiju are popular, but he's been gone for a while, and I think it did that. It told a complete story that reintroduced Gamera and a lot of his classic foes. This did its job. The next step is to bring Gamera back to the movies. Whether that means an original movie in Japan, or if it means bringing him into the Monsterverse, or maybe not even the Monsterverse, but some kind of American remake, or something. I think that if the series does well, and from the look of things it's being very well received, then the next step is to do a new Gamera story, one that's not connected to Rebirth, maybe one that's not connected to any of the previous films, or maybe it could be, you could shock everyone and do a continuation of the Showa timeline, maybe, but I feel like the ending is the ending, and now it's time to bring Gamera back in a different way, a way that will reach even more people. So since I'm on that track, what do I think of the series as a whole? Well, I've seen a lot of people saying that it's the best kaiju anime ever. I don't necessarily think I would go that far. I have acknowledged that the show has flaws. That being said, though, I do still think it was really good. Now, part of that is because compared to what we've been getting recently in terms of kaiju anime, it's leaps and bounds ahead of everything else. I mean, you've seen what else we've gotten. The Godzilla Polygon trilogy was a pretentious mess. Singular Point was confusing to the point where even it got confused itself a couple times. Attack on Titan started strong, but by all accounts ended very poorly. Gridman did well, but for some reason it's gaining a reputation as a fan service series when there's really not much fan service in it. Skull Island series was just utter garbage. Kaiju Decode might be really good, but currently its accessibility is limited. As for Gamera Rebirth, though, it did exactly what it set out to do. Have you ever heard somebody describe a piece of entertainment with the phrase, "it knows what it is"? I feel like that applies here. Gamera Rebirth is a series that knows what it is. And the reason I'm willing to forgive its flaws, even though I do still acknowledge them, is because of that. It knows what it is, and it's not claiming to be anything more. Again, let's look elsewhere for some contrast. The Godzilla Polygon trilogy thought it was a deep philosophical examination of nihilism, but it was really just cringy emo poetry. Godzilla Singular Point thought it was a lecture on quantum physics, but it was really technobabble from a Star Trek parody. But as for Gamera Rebirth, it claimed to be a coming-of-age story with kaiju action set pieces, and that is exactly what it is. It didn't pretend to be anything more, and it delivered nothing less. It is a series that knows what it is. And as a result, we know what it is too, and many of us are accepting it. Again, acknowledging that it's not perfect, and acknowledging that there are parts where it could have certainly been better, the fact remains, it was a fun ride, and I'm glad I went through it. I'm glad that it got me to get a different take on Hiroyuki Seshita. I'm glad that it has potentially introduced Gamera to a whole new generation of people, and I'm glad I saw it through to the end. Now the next step, as I said, is to bring Gamera back to the big screen. So let's see if Kadokawa makes that happen. I'm hoping they do. Either way, wherever we see Gamera turn up next, I'm confident that it'll be worth it. At least I hope it will be. And I'll definitely be there to check it out. You know, whenever it becomes available stateside. So, there you have it. Those are my full thoughts on the series. And I'm sure you have plenty of thoughts as well. So now that we finally reached the last episode, leave as many spoilers down there as you want. It's open season now. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off.
Thank you all for watching. If you want to see us keep doing what we're doing, you might consider doing all the usual YouTube things, as well as hopping down to the description to find links to DeviantArt, Patreon, Twitter, and links for the different books in the Tales from the Omnivault universe. Your support is naturally appreciated. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.